So I was outside, walking around, just relaxing. I love walking and I'll often go out for a couple hours to just roam around where I live. And I was thinking, man, I'm thirsty. I'd love something to drink right about now. So, me being me, I just went to the nearest store, hoping to find an iced tea, because that's usually what I buy on walks. And I'm going through the aisles, and going, there's no iced tea in the store. And I think to myself, damn it, oh well, it's what it's. Wait a minute, doesn't that sound right? After all, the word it's is literally just a contraction of it is, and it is what it is a common phrase, so what are up? Wait, that haven't made any sense either. What's going on? The English language, like any other language, has rules that are necessary for speakers to follow in order to make sense to each other. Even supposedly incorrect features of the language are usually dialectal variations with their own rules and intuitions. I mean, take something like, he ain't never finishing that. If we break it down literally, it's the same as, he am not never finishing that. Which, of course, sounds weird and incorrect, but yet, the original sounds completely fine, all because the changing role of the word ain't and the presence of double negation in some American dialects enable it to sound correct. However, even though English is very malleable, that doesn't mean anything goes. I can't just say and expect you to understand what that nonsense meant. Unless I'm Winston Churchill, I guess.
That is the result of His Majesty's government.
So clearly there is some limit. I think we can plot this out as a kind of continuum. On the very left, we have regularized standardized English variants, such as those codified by governments. On the very right, we have formless sludge with no intelligible meaning. Somewhere in the middle, a bit closer on the left, we have spoken language, with all its quirks and evolutions that haven't quite become a part of the formal language yet. But what do we have here? Logically, we should still be able to understand what's going on at this point, but there ought to be a strong degree of misapplying the language's rules in a way that no native speaker would do intentionally. Basically, this right here is the uncanny valley of the English language. And I've been thinking, what is the metaphorical face of this linguistic uncanny valley? What are some features English would have if we were to distort it in small but extremely unnatural ways? So, I've come up with a list of 12 possibilities. And without further ado, let's get into it. This is the first example I used in the intro to the video. In English, many combinations of words are used very frequently, so people shorten them over time. For example, it is can be shortened to it's. But as Tom Scott explains in this video, the nature of this contraction really makes your brain think something will come after it. It's usually not acceptable to just end a sentence on a contraction. What do I mean? Imagine this conversation.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good, are you?
Yeah, I'm.
The last one just sounds really strange, even though technically speaking, yes, you can shorten I am to I'm. Still, no native speaker would ever use contractions like this, so I think it's a good fit for our goal. I first saw this idea in an Atomic Shrimp video, if you're familiar with that channel. I think he was doing something about scam baiting, and he proposed this idea of parasitic questions. It's not something grammatical or even necessarily specific to the English language, but I still think it's very funny. Basically, you can take a lot of easy to answer questions, such as, what's your name? How are you? Or what's your profession? And very easily turn them into strange parasites by inverting the target of them, like, what's my name? How am I? What's my profession? Needless to say, your conversation mate will probably find these questions considerably harder to answer. There's a common mistake that many people, even some native speakers, make. These two words, animals and animals, are read the same way, but the top one is just the plural form of animal, as in, I love animals. The bottom is the possessive, as in, the animal's foot. Since they're pronounced the same way, it's not surprising that people mix them up. Well, actually, there is another word that's pronounced the same, and it's even written the same way too. The other form, animals, can actually just be a contraction of animal is, as in, the animal's running. This gives us a very funny opportunity. We can take all non-contractive apostrophes, accidental and intentional, and just assume they actually are meant to be contractions. Then we can uncontract them. For example, The dogs have been so happy since I brought Dave's toys over becomes the dog is have been so happy since I've brought Dave's toys over. Yes, that's pretty ridiculous. That's what we like to see here. English pronouns, I, he, she, etc. take various forms depending on how they're used in a sentence. For example, the difference between I and me is that I is always the subject of a sentence, or formally the nominative case, and me is the object, also known as the accusative case. That's why you could say something like, I killed him, but me killed he sounds strange. It confuses between English's subject-verb-object word order and the pronoun cases in a very unnatural way. As a side note, if you remember being in school and saying, me and him went to the mall, only for the teacher to correct you and say, actually it's he and I went to the mall. Well, this is why. In that case, he and I is the subject, so I has to be in the nominative case. Although actually it seems that this specific kind of case is actually natural for native speakers, so, they say there's an exception to everything, and this is just one of them. Several English tenses aren't really tenses. Maybe you've heard that English only has 2 tenses, and this is actually technically true. If we accept that a tense must be morphological, basically formed by modifying the base form of a verb, then English does indeed only have the present and past tenses. If we take the verb run, we can make it present tense as you run. We can make it past tense as you ran. But there's no way to make it future tense without using an auxiliary verb. You will run. One of English's most useful auxiliary verbs is have, which forms the perfect present and perfect past tenses. That is, you have completed your work and you had completed your work. These perfect tenses indicate that something just happened, or that it happened right before the moment under consideration. So how do we use this to contort our dear English language? Just always use the perfect present tense instead of past tense. This makes simple sentences sound extremely stupid. For example, on Tuesday, I gave you a notice becomes, on Tuesday, I've given you a notice. Or, I knew that I was right becomes, I have known that I was right. It just sounds really dumb, doesn't it? We've already seen earlier that many English words can be contracted together to form something quicker and easier to pronounce, but we haven't touched on the fact that many of these contractions operate on the same logic. So like, they are becomes their, you are becomes your, and we are becomes we're. The reason we can do this is because the are has something to be contracted onto in each of these cases, the they, you, or we. But what if we just break that rule and say that no foundation is necessary to form a contraction? What would we get? Well, one thing is that sentences such as are you happy can be rewritten as were you happy. And I quite like this, so let's include it in our list of broken rules. Here's one that kind of breaks the rules of our little challenge, because some dialects of English in the UK actually do this, although it's still considered formally incorrect. If you haven't realized it before, the indefinite articles a and an have rules governing where they're used. Basically, if the next word starts with a vowel, you use an, but if it starts with a consonant, you use a. So you can say an animal or a ship, but it sounds quite weird if you say a animal or an ship. Although it seems like this might be changing as the language evolves, so who knows, maybe in a few hundred years this distinction will go away. Either way, in the here and now, let's use the opposite indefinite articles for each case. It shall suit us well. Because English is a clusterfuck language evolved over hundreds and thousands of years, in contact with dozens of other languages, a lot of words used to be pronounced and written one way, but are no longer pronounced in the same way. For example, the word on the screen used to be pronounced knicht, but is now pronounced night. The K has become silent, and the GH, it's not technically silent, since it causes the word to be pronounced as night rather than knit, but it doesn't really have a sound of its own, so we'll count it. So, with this context, our next change is to bring back all the silent letters. Our nights will become knichts, our wens and wheres will become whens and wheres, and so on. Noun number is just whether something is singular or plural. The key significance is that based on noun number, the corresponding verbs in a sentence must change form. I can say, the dog is happy, or the dogs are happy. But I can't really say, the dog are happy, or the dogs is happy. Except maybe in some American English dialects, but shut up. To use a grammatical term, we can break another rule of English by disobeying the number agreement of nouns and verbs. One feature of language that we really don't give enough credit to is intonation. Did you hear what I just did? That sentence was, in no possible way, a question, and yet, it sounded like it was, because I steadily raised the pitch of my voice towards the end. There's another example, and perhaps that one was even more jarring. See, all languages have some version of stress, varied intonation in speech, or something of that sort. It helps us orient ourselves around a sentence by identifying what's important and what's about to come, so when I use these two techniques, it really messes with your head.
Have you taken out the trash?
Yeah, I have.
And that's exactly what we want. Collectively, I'll call this wrong intonation. The cooperative principle is an idea in philosophy and linguistics describing how conversation is oriented towards the achievement of common goals. There are a few main parts of linguistics: phonetics, semantics, and pragmatics, and the cooperative principle is concerned with the latter. According to Paul Grice, there are 4 main requirements to follow philosophically when making conversation. Each of these has their own name, but to be honest, you're not going to remember them, so I'll just describe what they are. 1. Be informative. Basically, don't under or over-specify things. 2. Be truthful, or just don't lie for no reason or pull random shit out of your ass. Number 3. Be relevant, or don't say something unrelated, even if it's true in the middle of a conversation. Number 4. Be clear. That is, avoid language that's not widely known or can be interpreted in many ways. We can imagine a dialogue where all 4 of Grice's maxims are violated.
Hey, how are you?
I'm happy, which means I'm experiencing a lot of joy, causing me to be glad. How are you?
David was fed to the slaughterhouse.
Wow, that really might obligate a form of mental pondering.
Needless to say, this is exactly the kind of thing we want. This dialogue has the air of conversation despite the fact that barely any information of any real value was actually exchanged and nothing actually happened. If any of these factors alone can be called the linguistic uncanny valley, it would probably be this. Center embedding is actually another thing that many people do in real spoken language, but taken to its extreme, it gives some utterly impenetrable sentences. Take Wikipedia's example, a man that a woman loves. Let's take this part of the sentence, a woman, and add some more information about it. How about instead of just being a woman, we make her a woman that a child knows? This makes things a bit more specific, but something interesting happens when we put this back into a sentence. A man that a woman that a child knows loves. As you can see, we've embedded some words in the center embedding, and even though right now this doesn't seem too terrible, we can just keep going. Instead of just a child, let's say it's a child that a bird saw. Then our sentence becomes, a man that a woman that a child that a bird saw knows loves. Oof. At the bounds of this kind of nesting, we get sentences whose vague meaning can still be carried across in conversation, but whose precise significance is challenging to parse. Let's include it in our list of techniques. If you guys enjoyed my video, me would be extremely happy if you have left and like and have subscribed to my channel. And what do I think about English is Uncanny Valley? Please leave your opinion on what I've shown in this video in my channel in the comments, and I hope you were as interested in the video's contents as I'm. So, were you gonna subscribe? Either way, Argentina is a country.